Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive. Today we're tackling, well, a huge topic, a brief history of the United States.
Hmm.
Based on the sources you've sent over, our goal is really to cut through the noise. We want to pull out the key insights, the big moments, maybe some surprising facts, basically give you a faster way to grasp the foundational events that shaped the U.S. from the very beginning right up to now.
Exactly. And, we say brief history, but the impact of these events is just enormous. Understanding how they connect, how they echo today, it's really crucial for understanding America now.
Okay, let's unpack this then, starting right at the beginning. We have to acknowledge, first off, the thousands of years before 1492. Thriving Native American communities were here.
Yeah.
Complex societies, cultures, trade, they populated these lands.
Absolutely. They were here living full lives long before any European ships showed up. And a key point, often kind of smoothed over, is Columbus in 1492. He didn't actually land on the mainland U.S. He reached the Caribbean. But that moment, it really marked the beginning of colonial exploitation, a devastating shift for indigenous societies.
Right. It set a whole new, often tragic course. So as European powers looked towards this continent, England eventually got its first permanent foothold. Jamestown, Virginia, that was 1607. Must have been, well, incredibly difficult for those first settlers.
Oh, absolutely. A perilous venture. And then, not too long after, you get the Pilgrims.
Right.
1620, they arrive on the Mayflower, set up Plymouth Colony in Massachusetts. And these early settlements, they weren't just isolated points. They were laying the groundwork, really, for the 13 colonies, each one quite different.
And you can see how, as they grew, this desire for more self-governance started bubbling up, which of course led to tensions with Britain. You could sort of feel it building. And then, yeah, that buildup exploded. This is where it gets really interesting. The 13 colonies, after all the disputes over taxes and control, they just rebelled against Britain, the biggest empire around at the time. Pretty audacious.
It really was. And that moment, July 4th, 1776, the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson doing most of the writing. But it was more than just saying, we're leaving. It was this radical idea, wasn't it, that people have the right to govern themselves. Unalienable rights. An idea that spread globally, even while America itself was struggling with the huge contradiction of slavery.
So the war itself, it was long, it was hard, but it ended with the Treaty of Paris in 1783. That officially sealed the deal. War over, America independent.
Yeah, recognized on the world stage. But winning independence, well, that just created a whole new set of problems, didn't it? How do you actually build a nation from these very different colonies? How do you manage growth, define who you are, especially with that ideal of self-determination not applying to everyone?
Exactly. So independence won. Now what? The next massive step.
Yeah.
Writing the Constitution in 1787. This was like the blueprint, right?
Yeah.
For how this new republic was supposed to work. Balancing power, protecting rights, all that.
Precisely. The framework. And then, right after, setting up the presidency. George Washington, the first president, 1789. It wasn't just picking a leader. It was setting a precedent, defining what American leadership would even look like.
And around this time, you also get this huge push, westward expansion. That whole concept really takes root.
Yeah.
Things like the Louisiana Purchase in 1803. Suddenly the country doubles in size, and this idea of manifest destiny driving settlers west, often, with devastating consequences for Native Americans.
It was a time of huge vision, immense growth, but also deep challenges. How do you unify a nation expanding so fast? How do you deal with diverse groups? How do you live up to those founding ideals?
Yeah, and simmering underneath all that expansion and nation building was the deepest division of all, slavery. That couldn't hold. It eventually just erupted at the Civil War, 1861 to 1865. The deadliest war in American history. North, the Union against the South, the Confederacy, fighting to preserve slavery.
And the outcome, a Union victory. Led by Abraham Lincoln, it fundamentally changed the country's direction, and critically, it led to the abolition of slavery, the 13th Amendment. I mean, a monumental shift. Millions freed. But then the question becomes huge. What does freedom mean? How do you integrate 4 million formerly enslaved people? What about citizenship in a nation so deeply scarred?
Which leads right into Reconstruction, that period after the war, an attempt, really, to rebuild the South and figure out those exact questions. Citizenship, rights, economic freedom, but it was deeply flawed and faced incredible resistance. Okay, so moving on from that tumultuous period, late 19th, early 20th century, this is the age of massive industrial growth. Factories, railroads, cities booming, the whole country transforms economically, socially, just incredibly fast.
It's really striking, isn't it, how quickly that happened? And what's fascinating is how that industrial power quickly translated into power on the world stage. After the Spanish-American War in 1898, America really steps up as a global player, a new kind of expansion.
Yeah, you can see that industrial might flexing its muscles internationally.
Mm-hmm.
And that influence was clear when America got involved in World War I from 1917 to 1918. Definitely marked its arrival as a major world power.
Right. And if you look at the bigger picture here, there's this feedback loop, isn't there? Domestic industry fuels global reach, and that global reach opens up new markets, which fuels more industry. It set the pattern for the next century.
Okay, so the next phase, it brings a sort of double blow. Immense hardship, then global conflict. Starts with the Great Depression in 1929. Just a devastating economic collapse, not just in the U.S., but worldwide.
A profound crisis. And then, following that trauma, the world descends into World War II. America jumps in directly from 1941 to 1945, a total war effort that touched everyone, mobilized the entire country.
And during that war, the really difficult, world-changing decision, dropping the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, bringing the war to an end, but in such a devastating way.
Yeah. And those two huge events, the Depression, which led to things like the New Deal, massive government programs, and then World War II. They didn't just reshape America internally, they totally transformed its global role, positioned it as really one of the two emerging superpowers.
Right, which leads straight into the next era, the Cold War. This post-WWII rivalry between America and the Soviet Union, ideologies clashing, not direct fighting between them mostly, but proxy wars, the arms race, constant tension, spying.
Decades of it. But amidst all that tension, you get this incredible moment, the Apollo 11 mission, 1969. Neil Armstrong walking on the moon. It was more than just science, right? It was a huge symbolic win in the space race, a demonstration of American capability.
Definitely a bright spot in a tense time. And the whole era, that Cold War struggle, it finally ends. The fall of the Soviet Union in 1991.
Which seemed to mark the end of that bipolar world. And looking back, it's amazing how that period, from the end of WWII to the Soviet collapse, really cemented America's role as a dominant global leader. It shaped alliances, international politics, everything, really.
Okay, so that brings us closer to the present, the modern era. And for many people, a huge turning point was 9/11, the terrorist attacks in 2001.
Absolutely. A profound shock. And that led directly into the war on terror. Long, complex conflicts in Afghanistan and Iraq changed foreign policy, domestic security. The impacts are still felt today.
Then, a really significant moment domestically, 2008. Barack Obama elected as the first African-American president. You see the arc of history there, building on centuries of struggle.
Definitely a landmark. And then more recently, we faced challenges like the COVID-19 pandemic, starting around 2020, and also a noticeable rise in political polarization around that time, too. What's interesting is how these recent things, they aren't totally new, are they? They often echo or build on those historical patterns and divisions we've been talking about. Public health, political divides.
Yeah, the past is never really past, is it? And then most recently, Joe Biden becoming president in 2021.
So when you ask what it all means for today, well, each of these recent events, terrorism, pandemics, political shifts, they're all deeply connected to that history we just skimmed through. The past isn't just history, it's actively shaping the present we're living in.
Wow. Okay, so we really did cover a huge amount of ground there, from the very first peoples on this land right up to events still unfolding. Hopefully, you listening have gained a clearer picture of those key foundational moments based on the sources we had.
Yeah, and hopefully it underscores why knowing this history, even the brief version, is so important. It really is key to making sense of America today, the news, the debates, all of it.
So maybe something to think about as you go about your day. Just how interconnected are all these historical threads? How did one event truly pave the way for the next? It all builds layer upon layer into the complex, still evolving story of America. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep asking questions, keep being curious.